Hello, everybody, and welcome back to This Day in History. I had a heck of a time getting up. I'm actually running a little bit later than normal to go to the gym, all that, but I mean, it is a beautiful day. It's sunny, it's warm, blue skies, a lot of white clouds. But yeah, it was just a little bit tougher going for me today. It is what it is. I found out last night, after I did yesterday's video, of course. So yesterday's birthdays, I forgot, the Olsen twins' birthday was yesterday. And if you don't know who the Olsen twins are, the Olsen twins played little Michelle Tanner on the TV series Full House. They had their own clothing line and the like as they were growing up, but they charmed America with their sweetness. When they were little, they were just little babies, really, and they played Baby Michelle on the TV series. So happy belated birthday, Mary Kate and Ashley. Their birthdays were yesterday. And as always, we start with birthdays. Today we have some. Oh my. That. A 55 Bel Air just passed by. Might have been a 56. I don't know. It was kind of cool. We start with birthdays, because that just seems to be the thing that we do. And yes, my car's squealing again. My cousin thinks it's a loose bolt on my alternator that's rubbing against my belt. So I gotta get that figured out. So let's start with birthdays, shall we? The first birthday, it's 1811, and Harriet Beecher Stowe was born on 1811. Now, what was important about Harriet Beecher Stowe is that she was an author, and she authored Uncle Tom's Cabin, which has been credited to having been a catalyst for the events that led to the American Civil War. It is said that she had a chance encounter with President Lincoln, and when introduced to her, Lincoln said, "Oh, so you're the little woman who started this war," or something along those lines. But her birthday was today in 1811. We fast forward to 1928. This guy's a revolutionary. I don't think he was that great of a guy. He is chiefly responsible for, while he did bring revolution to Argentina and Cuba, he also brought revolution through acts of extreme violence, as revolutionaries do. Remember, kids, just because you're a revolutionary and you think you're fighting for a good fight, you're not always the good guy here. He was chiefly responsible for bringing communism into Latin America, and he killed a lot of people. I mean, he personally killed a lot of people. I know that in Latin communities, he's celebrated as this revolutionary hero. Streets are named after him. You got these T-shirts named after him, or bearing his likeness and all that. And he's heralded as a hero, but really he's not. I mean, he was no different than any other murderous dictator thug out there. He's right up there with Fidel Castro. It's at any rate. I mean, when we do this day in history, there's no bias. Meaning, I don't deliberately cut someone out just because I don't like them historically. It is what it is. His birthday's today. He's a historical figure. There you go. I don't like this historical figure. I don't like people who murder people. So at any rate, moving right along, getting off this soapbox. 1946, former President Donald Trump's birthday. His birthday's today. I knew it was coming around. I thought his birthday was in July for some reason, but No, his birthday's today. 1950, Rowan Williams was born. Rowan Williams is the Archbishop of Canterbury. 1969, Steffi Graf. I remember watching Steffi Graf when I used to watch tennis. She was a German tennis player, really good. But her birthday is today. Born in 1969. And in 1982, Lang Lang, which was a Chinese musician, say that one 3 times fast. Lang Lang's birthday is today. So now we get into the history. And we got some pretty interesting stuff here. From battles fought to space age stuff. So let's just start. The year is 1645, and the parliamentary new model battles royalists, in that Oliver Cromwell, on behalf of the parliamentary new model, battles and defeats Prince Rupert of the royalists. 1777, which is why today, being June 14th, today is Flag Day. I assume that's why it makes today, why Flag Day is what it is today. It is on this day that the Continental Congress approved the design and likeness of the Stars and Stripes as our national flag. So presumably that is why today is Flag Day, is because, well, it's the anniversary of our national flag being approved as being our national flag. 1800. Okay, so here's a couple things that Napoleon did. In 1800, Napoleon would beat the Austrians, which set up a treaty. Oh no, that treaty came later. Sorry, I'm reading my chicken scratch. Napoleon defeated the Austrians at the Battle of Marengo. The Battle of Marengo. Napoleon defeats the Austrians. 7 years later, on the same day, Napoleon, he wins the Battle of Friedland, and in doing so, a peace treaty was signed between him and Alexander I of Russia. So yeah, Napoleon. Fast forward to 1940, today's the day that the Germans roll into and occupy Paris. And they would occupy France for the next 4 years. Oh, I finally caught up with that Bel Air. 1963, this is pretty interesting. So 1963, the Russians, it's the space race between the United States and the Russians. The Russians, on this day in 1963, they launched Vostok 5, right? Yes, they launched Vostok 5. But what would happen in 2 days from now is that and it was a manned spacecraft. So I mean, they launched cosmonauts into space. But 2 days later, so that would be June 16th, 1963. They would launch Vostok 6, another manned spacecraft. Only this spacecraft had Valentina Tereshkova among the crew there. And what that meant for the space race, what it meant for Russia, what it meant for the world, really, is that was the first time that a female would travel into space. So that's something to be celebrated, even if it wasn't good old USA. You have to really hand it to the Ruskies, though, because like they brought out the best in us when it came to the space race, and we brought out the best in them. So this competition that we had of space exploration, right? Who benefited from that? All of mankind, really, because it benefited our quest for knowledge. It benefited our exploring our universe, and so that's a good thing. So like, I'm not going to trash talk the Russians, because they brought out the best in us, and I'd like to think that we brought out the best in them too. Fast forward to the year is 1982, and in 1982, in Port Stanley, Argentina, a large Argentine garrison, they surrendered to the British, thus ending the Falklands War. The Falklands War was a war that broke out between the English and the Argentinians. I believe it was over some territorial disputes or something like that. I know that the British got bloodied quite a bit. I mean, like early on, that there was at some point they got spanked hard, and then they came back with a vengeance. And obviously, they won the war, which only took. It wasn't a very long-lasting war, really. It was. I want to say it was like a week or something, maybe a couple weeks. I'm not sure, but it was very short-lived. But it was. The Argentinians are no slouches. They're known for being formidable fighters. UN uses them a lot in their operations. I have a friend of mine who always talks highly of the Argentine Special Forces. Like, these guys are they're really good. They're not to be trifled with. So, but yeah, 1982, the Falkland War ends with a British victory, partly due to this large garrison surrendering at Port Stanley. In 2009, Phil Jackson, head coach of the LA Lakers, he wins his 10th NBA championship. 10th, right? And it was on this day that he won his 10th championship. LA Lakers were playing the Orlando Magic, soundly defeated them, and Phil Jackson has probably gone down in history as being the greatest NBA coach. I could probably get behind that as the greatest NBA coach of all time. This is my speculation, really. But, I mean, like, while, back during the Rip City days, I was a huge fan of the Blazers. And then to me, after 22 years of getting to the championships and then just not pulling off a victory, it's almost like the Blazers, all they ever cared about was winning the West Coast Conference, and that was it. There was nothing further to do, except there was a world championship to win. And it really kind of solidified the notion that their 1977 victory of winning the world championship was, I hate saying it, but it's kind of how I feel, is that it kind of makes it look like that it was a fluke victory, because it only happened the one time. And so I don't know, I lost faith in the Blazers years ago. I don't really follow basketball a whole lot anymore. But you have to give credit where credit's due. And Phil Jackson has always been a cool, level-headed, really good coach. I mean, he did wonders for the LA Lakers. His coaching style is above reproach. He I mean, the man's coaching has led to championship victories, and so there's something to be said about that. It's too bad that we never had a coach of that caliber. Well, I also think that we've had coaches that were really good, but the organization ended up firing them because they just, you know. Jack Ramsey was fired publicly. Like, it was released to the media about his firing. I mean, like, they didn't, as I recall, the franchise didn't even have the stones to contact him personally before letting it slip to the media that he was fired. I do remember the local radio DJs saying something about that how horrible was it to find out that you're fired by reading it in the newspaper that morning. And we've had other great coaches. Rick Adelman was an excellent coach. I mean, I liked him. Maurice Cheeks was an excellent coach. I liked him too. But it seems like if the players just couldn't pull off the overall victory after a few years, the coach was just fired. Yet you really have to examine the quality of the players, right? And we didn't have bad players, but we did have some players that were dead weight. We had some players that were just thought their stuff didn't stink and that they could, you know, they were there because they were entitled. Damon Stoudemire. There were players there that thought winning the West Coast Conference was good enough, and that was it. And there was no drive, no zeal to go, you know, to press on any further. At least that was my impression with them, with their 22-year streak of always winning the West Coast Conference. But enough about that. Enough of that. So today's featured event happens to be on this day, 1940. So on this day in 1940, Germany rolls into France, right? We already discussed that. France is, Germany rolls into France, occupies France, but today is also the day that the first trainload of prisoners arrive at Auschwitz. And Auschwitz became Germany's largest concentration / execution camp, labor camp. It said that 1 million plus were killed at Auschwitz, and that's a bit of a Debbie Downer moment, really. But you know, it's important. It's important to bring up the bad historical stuff, and the reason why is that lest we forget, right? The basic foundation in learning history is that we learn history so that we learn from the mistakes of the past, so that we never repeat them again. And the Holocaust was tragic. You know, depending on what numbers you want to believe, 7 million, 6 million Jews were killed, gypsies were killed, political dissidents were killed, homosexuals were killed, the disabled were killed. I mean, Germany wanted this perfect utopia society, and their way of getting to that was to, you know, do away with all of the non-desirables. And who they declared as undesirable were, well, the demographics I just listed. And the Russians did the same thing. It's just that, you know, they were more secretive about it. And the global community really didn't find out about it until after Stalin died, when Khrushchev came up and said, hey, this is what Stalin was doing, you know. Where it's said that 6 or 7 million Jews were killed under Hitler. It is also reported that it's in excess of 20 million were killed under Stalin. And so, yeah, we talk about everything. You know, we talk about the good, we talk about the bad, because that's what needs to be exposed. The bad needs to be exposed. We're not profiting off of it. We're not promoting it. We're not saying that it was a good thing. You know, we bring it up so that we can make sure that we don't ever repeat that ever again. But see, that's a slippery slope. Like, when talking about racism, for instance, Morgan Freeman said it best. He said, well, he was asked, well, how do we stop racism? Morgan Freeman said, just stop talking about it. And I mean, there's a valid point to that. But at the same time, it's like, if we stop talking about the Holocaust, what happens to the memory of those lost to the Holocaust? That's my only thing. You know, if we sweep it under the rug long enough, and because there are generations that don't believe that it ever happened. I mean, there are people out there that it's been swept from history that they believe that it never happened. In the 50s, Germany swept it under the rug, and Germany would educate their kids saying that the Holocaust never happened. And, you know, that was their way of trying to, get beyond the tragedy that was World War II. Simon Wiesenthal, the famous Nazi hunter, his daughter come home from school one day, and she was so upset because, they were talking about the concentration camps, and she, having had been in one, the subject had been brought up about the concentration camps, and the teacher said, oh, that didn't happen, and Wiesenthal's daughter was like, well, yes, they did happen, I was in one of them. And the teacher's like, no, you're mistaken, blah, 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 blah. And Simon Wiesenthal was so upset about this that he and his group, they tracked down, that's what it was, they were talking about the Anne Frank story. And then the teacher was like, that didn't happen, Anne Frank was a fictional character, blah, 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 blah. And Simon was so irate about this whole situation that he and his team, they tracked down the driver, the soldier who drove the truck that transported the Frank family from where they were captured to the concentration camp that they ended up in. Right? He brings that driver to that classroom, sat him down, and said, tell them the story. And the driver admits to the teacher, to the students, that Anne Frank did exist, that he remembered Anne Frank. He was the one who drove her to her death. So, why is it important to bring up these historical points? For exactly that reason. To make sure that these historical events are not swept under the rug and are just forgotten about as if it never happened, because it did. Germany's biggest sin in this regard, Germany's biggest sin was knowing that their government was doing something wrong and doing nothing about it. They went along with it. You had a lot of German citizens were like, but we didn't kill these people. No, but you allowed those people to be in office that did. You didn't stand up for the right thing. Yes, the brown shirts did some really, destructive things. Like, they would go beat people up, and they would go shoot people. They'd go break down their businesses and whatnot, to intimidate. But you know what? The a bully can only continue to bully as long as he still has the ability to instill fear. And if enough people rise up and say, enough is enough, we're done with you, you know, you take away that power from the bully. And essentially that was Germany's sin. Germany didn't stand up to the bully. Germany didn't say enough is enough. Germany didn't say you're not doing this anymore. It took the greatest generation, my grandfather's generation, to go over there and knock the hell out of them and to say enough is enough, you're not doing this anymore. And not just us Americans, but it was a coalition force. It was the British, it was the French, it was the Scottish, it was, you know, the Italians eventually when they deposed Mussolini. You know, it was valiant, noble men and women, the Dutch underground, the French underground. It was valiant men and women that decided to stand up to tyranny. So that's my other soapbox for the day, I suppose. But this is getting long, and this is I'm ending this video now. This concludes this day in history. We'll do it again tomorrow for June 15th. As always, you know, do take care of yourselves, be blessed, and have a great day. We'll see you later. Take care. Bye.